You know rappers like to rock pools. I rock pools you can't swim in, but I'm collecting the spice on the premise.
Hey everybody, my name is Xavier Hawk. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what's happening in the ICO space. I'm going to give you a kind of overview, and then we're going to go into a little bit more depth. First thing I have to say, however, is that this is not a solicitation. Because we are doing an actual raise that is a security offering, we have to abide by certain rules, and that is, one, that we cannot, this is not a solicitation. Any sales or any investment will be handled privately through a private offering memorandum with accredited investors only. Furthermore, this presentation is for informational purposes, educational purposes, and does not in any way offer or constitute investment advice. Always seek legal counsel. Thank you. So a little bit about myself. I founded a home health agency 14 years ago, and we just had a recent exit. I grew up in business, a multiple million-dollar organization, built it from the ground up in a highly regulated market. I designed communities in 2009 to 2013, and that's what got me into Bitcoin in the first place, because I was designing an internal accounting mechanism, an internal accounting token to handle rent and other things. And so I saw Bitcoin and I was like, oh, this is going to be the future. So I got in 2012-13, the winter of, and then I created the first decentralized asset-backed self-governed crypto, which was called permacredits. This was a precursor to projects like Tether, and it was on the on the counterparty platform. So it was the first attempt and the first architecture, essentially, of a decentralized asset-backed crypto, which is something that is the market is waiting for at this time even. And so Bernard Lietaer, the chief architect of the Euro, he joined my team based on the talks that I gave and the writings that I had on governance and on asset backing. And it turned out that he had had a passion for this since the 90s. So he joined my team, and then I was the first to negotiate a cryptocurrency for a nation in Southeast Asia. It was actually a stable price trade reference currency that was asset backed, that the different countries that were using it were going to be using that currency and backing it with the assets that they were trading. It was the first negotiations of its kind. So this is kind of like giving you all the background. So the ICO space is interesting because what we've seen up till now is we've seen projects getting funded that aren't even businesses. They don't have a business plan. They're essentially waiting on their token mechanics to provide them the liquidity and the capital to keep funding and operating. So they're saying, hey, we don't necessarily need revenue, we don't necessarily need a business plan, we're just gonna have a token that goes up in value and that's gonna make us rich and we're gonna be able to produce the product that we want. So they're really shooting for untested ideas, ethereal products that don't necessarily have a foundation in the day-to-day use of most people. And most of the times, they're still making money, the people who are investing in them, obviously, but most of the times these products are going straight to the Bitcoin market itself, not necessarily the end user experience. And we've all heard the metrics that it's smaller than Facebook, the market cap of all cryptocurrencies. So what we're talking about is a small segment of population that are into this, that are into finances. Some of the things that I say in other talks is that nobody puts a sticker of PayPal on their car because nobody really cares about finance, or I don't want to say nobody cares about finance, but the majority of the population, they're not into fintech. They're into their lifestyle. They're into having good things and having great things and not trying to understand how money is redefined. There's a small segment of us that actually care about that. So most of these ICOs have launched into that space, into the Bitcoin space, into the blockchain space, and they've made a lot of money for a lot of people. So yeah, this is interesting because somebody from Silicon Valley who has experience in the blockchain, they're like, Xavier, you're not a blockchain company and you're not a Silicon Valley startup. You're kind of like a hybrid between the two because you actually have a revenue model and you actually are addressing this like a business and not just a crypto startup. So this is what we were talking about earlier. The market cap for Facebook is bigger than all of cryptocurrency altogether. So that shows you that we have a large play here, somewhere to grow a lot. So the reason ICOs are actually working is because you have a segment of the population who are 15 to 30-year-olds, for the most part, who are early in, understood digital currencies because they were trading it on their World of Warcraft games, and they've made millions and millions of dollars, and they've never paid taxes. And they're ideologically opposed to paying taxes, and they probably won't, right? So they've made millions and millions of dollars, they're sitting on it, they're not gonna go into fiat, they're just gonna keep rolling it. So everybody's like, there's a bubble happening, but yeah, you've got money that's like sick money that you haven't seen before, rolling this whole system further and further and further, and nobody's really trying to get out of fiat, or nobody needs to go back to fiat because they can rent their Airbnbs, they can get flights, they can buy cars, they can buy houses, so they don't need to go back to fiat. So the money keeps going. So this is the key. When you saw Ethereum raise how much they raised when they first raised, it was because they were going to capital markets, people who wanted to get into Bitcoin. So they were getting into Bitcoin through the ICO, Ethereum's first ICO, right? This is what's happening with the biggest ICOs that are happening in the space. They're going to capital markets, old school capital markets, and they're saying, hey, you want $30 million worth of Bitcoin? Tough luck, you can't buy that. You can't go anywhere and buy $30 million worth of Bitcoin, but you can buy our token, and then we'll trade it for you, or you'll trade it yourself, and you'll get into Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, and diversify your portfolio through our ICO. This is the mechanics behind the truly successful ICOs. Because they can cash out in the other coins at the opening, right? But if you are truly a security offering like we are, you can't cash out right away, and you can't do it and the problem is that the reason why everybody wants to do utility tokens is because there's liquidity, or so they say, on exchanges. But it's sort of like a free-for-all at this point, where everybody's getting, they're calling their tokens utility tokens, whether they're not at all, or they are, and they're going and getting them on exchanges, and when the hammer falls down, it's going to fall down on unsecuritized securities, meaning unregulated securities, right? So the challenge for all of us ICOers at this time is being able to provide a security token, do all the proper Reg D, the S filing, all of this, but provide liquidity at the time of the opening for the people who bought the tokens. Well, as one of the first asset-backed tokens, with a dividend-paying structure, you don't necessarily need liquidity, though we can provide it. Like, I don't know if any of you were here for the first talk that I was on the panel. We were talking about secondary boutique markets, essentially, for in other jurisdictions that are closed with proper KYC and doing proper securities transactions, that you can provide liquidity for certain kinds of security tokens. And here's the kicker that nobody's really saying, and this is why the ICOs are working, because it doesn't matter what the business is, because people are getting into the ICOs, they're buying the tokens, and then they're selling them right after the opening, getting their money out, and then they peace out. So the people who've made the money are the companies themselves. They've gotten a lot of capital. The people who bought the tokens early and sold them, because then they've made their money back and they're pieced out, and it's the people who are the bag holders, essentially, they get screwed. And this is why the SEC is going to start cracking down. So what makes a good ICO really? Well, revenue model would be nice, right? You want to have actual revenue, you want to have assets, you want to have something that is a transactional business that is actually doing real world business, not just to your Bitcoin people, but to the real world, right? You want a strong team, you want a history of making money, you want application beyond the crypto and fintech, meaning you want like lifestyle. So the reason I have this picture back here is because the companies of the future, they will be providing lifestyle. You will be an owner of the company, you will be an employee of the company, and you will be a patron of the company, and you'll have a stake in them. So those are the companies of the future. When Google starts providing housing, you'll see things start shifting into this corporate feudal world. So some say a small market cap is really, like, everything's shifting. Everybody's like, oh, we've seen these big market caps not do very well. But the problem here is you're not taking into account, the capital markets coming in, $30 million, $40 million into Bitcoin, into Litecoin through the ICOs. So you can have a large market cap, and it really doesn't matter except to the bag holders. However, if you have a business model and a revenue model that actually meets that demand, if for instance, we're doing a project in Africa, which is last mile infrastructure, KYC for the last mile in Africa, this is a big, big money play for the carriers because they have to provide KYC for their SIM card holders. If they don't, they get fined billions of dollars. So a couple $100 million project in there, would say, hey, this makes that project worth $100 million. So you also need fund management and good token metrics and good sale mechanics. It needs to make sense, and it needs to be something that actually works for both the investor, the company, and all the other investors as well. So ideally, it's a company that works properly. So the 21st century right now, something that has never happened before, have we had the ability to gauge the will of an entire segment of the population and action upon it. So we can take people from Mongolia, we can take people from Africa, we can take people from Russia, South America, Brazil, all of these different countries and continents, and see what they want to do together and action upon it with a token and therefore like a currency essentially, so that they can function and execute their will, execute their project. So the problems of the 21st century won't be solved by our governments, they will be solved by us, the people of the earth, together in a systematic architecture that works for everybody, that provides a basic income for their contributions, because 70% of all of the production in the world, manufacturing is gone. We're going to see a lot of people without jobs. How are we going to feed them? If we don't feed them, then they're going to revolt and we're going to have problems. But if we can pay them for their will, their vision, their contributions, their voting, their likes, their dislikes, their content, for their contributions to steering the spaceship Earth, then we have a system that actually could work for everybody. And if we have a fund or a project or a company that's investing in a lot of different funds and a lot of different arenas, mining and housing and all of these things, and we're producing revenue and everybody votes, kind of like what Superbloom was talking about. If everybody can vote then on what they want to see the projects that happen from the revenue that these companies are making, then we can change the world together. So that's the title of the talk, but this is my company, Phireon. This will be owned by everybody, and everybody gets a vote, and everybody gets a say in how the future of this civilization runs. And it'll be through a cooperative membership where everybody's part owner, they patronize the company, and they work for the company. So we're a decentralized autonomous corporation that invests in and accelerates regenerative businesses and initiatives, i.e. the will of the people. We invest in companies, we curate companies, we vet companies, and we also have people with a social merit algorithm that determines a person's value, not just in their financial capital, but in 8 different verticals: social capital, educational capital, material capital. So we can provide a rolling metric and a changing metric of an individual's actual value to their system based upon their ring of trust, who they're connected with, and it provides a baseline for how much they get paid for all of their microtransactions. So we can provide what people call a universal basic income, but really it's just a baseline income for their contributions and their value, based upon their value. So around the world, everybody says, hey, I want to do a project, I want to do this project. Our team of experts, our team of entrepreneurs, our team of educators, our team of consultants, they make sure they do feasibility studies. They say, okay, this project will work. We do a Kickstarter style mechanics. And we leverage the crowd power of our membership to suggest, vote on, curate, and vet initiatives for the best possible outcomes. So somebody says, hey, we want supply chain management. They put a proposal together. They say, this is how much revenue we think it's going to make. Phireon says, hey, the whole population says, this is a great idea. So Phireon then gives them the funding that they need in exchange for 10% in perpetuity of the revenue that company makes. They get to keep it, they get their equity, they get to do whatever they please, but Phireon then gets a portion of that revenue. So leveraging that, in the white paper it talks the actual figures, but we're talking tens of millions of dollars per quarter. So successfully chosen initiatives are then provided the resources they need to exponentiate their success, including services. So people in the company actually go and work for these companies. They say, hey, I can do this. And because of the social merit algorithm, they've proven that they have this skill, this skill, this skill, and it's proven by their network, and they have a rating system in there that allows them to actually take part in and apply for that position. So you've got a built-in audience, a built-in workforce, and a built-in patronization membership, so that it helps exponentiate their success when they go to the global market. And people are getting paid for their contributions into the system. So Eric Wesley is our COO. He's the director of operations. He's run a number of projects, from marijuana to Chinese manufacturing. He's run all of their companies. He's run multi-million-dollar companies. Bernard Liotard is the chief architect of the euro, like I mentioned earlier. David Orban, you can call him the godfather of ICOs, essentially. He's really in the space in a big way and helping people. He helped Ethereum launch their ICO. Karen Carponi, she is a brand manager and a business consultant for Acon Lighting Africa, and is providing us a lot of our contents to introductions to some of the top leadership in Africa and the Marley family, so that we can leverage the crowd power of festivals and music, essentially, to bring people into this new lifestyle. Robbie, he's the founder of Counterparty, which is where we were going to launch permacredits back in the day, and this was one of the first decentralized systems in play, the Bitcoin 2.0 phase. Holly Ruxin, she manages Montcalm. We have a number of fund managers in place, so that when we raise, it takes a lot of business and a lot of know-how to manage properly the amount of funds that a large corporation should have. And if we are generating revenue on mining, rent, and all of these other revenue generating sources, then we want to have somebody that's in place that knows what they're doing with that profit and with those. And Alex, he's the inventor of 4G wireless. And if you look into our structure a little bit more later, you'll understand that we're building the network of networks. So basically a standard operating system for all of these different kind of social economies, taking microeconomies and selling them, pretty much giving them to festivals, giving them to colleges, giving to small towns, and eventually up to municipalities and governments, because that's where my world is. John Robert Sutton, he has Sutton Selects, and the Gravity Network is, we have an app that's going to be ready in just a few short months here. Exemplar Law, they should be represented here very shortly. They've handled some of the biggest ICOs in the space. Network Society Ventures, that's David's play, and CoinCart, they're helping with the actual logistics and mechanics of the private sale, the token sale. And ARC is one of the blockchains out there that has a really great voting system, and they're actually implementing some of the higher functionality of Ethereum and some of the others. I'm just going to let that speak for itself. So we actually have revenue. 10% of those JV initiatives that I was talking about is the revenue that we're saying, 1 million per year per 5 initiatives. Transaction fees. So the power here too is that if we take a transactional system, like a point of sale system based on a social algorithm and a social app, and you come to rent one of our apartments in our buildings, you're going to be paying in our functional currency, in our internal token. So we get the transactions on that instead of MasterCard and Visa. And when we build out the network, then we're talking lots and lots of revenue that we get to share with the people who are including themselves in our point of sale membership. So imagine going up to a music festival and saying, hey, use our point of sale system, and you'll get 1% of all the transactions that happen in there, rather than, MasterCard or Visa. So Renton Hubs, we're close to the end. Okay, so yeah. So one of the things that is really cool about this is that when we build this program, we get to take parts of it and bring it off and break it off, like the blockchain algorithm the blockchain voting system. We get to take that intellectual property worth $1 billion in and of itself, that patent, and go sell it to governments and say, hey, you want a secure voting mechanism that's from your phone that you can't hack? Come to us. So we have built-in revenue models and large plays on top of that. So we're building our first hub in Delray Beach now. $5 million independently valued social governance app that's in play right now. We've got patents pending for a blockchain voting system, the social merit algorithm, and social governance, and a letter of intent talking about that last mile infrastructure. And then the full social governance app will be ready in the beginning of Q2 2008. And the Discount Buyers Club, which is essentially the market transactional power of this thing, we can actually add vendors on that will agree to accept our Phi tokens without having to hold them, because Phireon, the company, will pay them their fiat directly. And so we also have 2 other companies on the side. Phireon Global Partners is the management company that's building this. And then we have a brokerage. So here's the important part. If you have $30 million worth of cash or dollars that you want in Bitcoin, you can purchase our ICO, purchase into the Phi tokens, and our brokerage will manage the 6 months transactions that take you out of Phi into a diversified crypto portfolio. Thank you very much for your time. My name is Xavier Hawk. I hope you have a beautiful night. Oh yeah, do you guys have any questions?